Imagine waking up one morning feeling a little off and with a fever. 3 days later, you're dead. No warning, no cure, no explanation. This wasn't a horror movie. This was a regular Tuesday in medieval Europe. The plague has killed more humans than any war in history. It collapsed empires, rewrote economies, and changed the course of civilization multiple times. And it all started with a small stomach ache. In this video, I'll be giving you some really bizarre facts about the plague. Some are disgusting, and some will change the way you see the world. Before we dive in, something shortly real quick. This is a new channel, and any kind of support would actually really help me. So if you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. It genuinely means a lot and it helps this channel reach more people. And I'll be making sure to deliver the best for you. Anyway, sorry for that. Let's go and dive in. Fact 1. The origin of the plague. Most people think the plague started in the Middle Ages. It didn't. The bacteria responsible for the plague has existed for 6,000 to 7,000 years. We're talking Stone Age, before the pyramids, before written language. The crazy part? The ancestor of the plague wasn't deadly at all. It just gave you a stomachache. But one day, through a single genetic mutation, everything changed. That one accidental mutation transformed a bacteria that caused digestion problems into something that killed a third of Europe. Before this mutation, the plague spread person to person through the air, just like the flu. After it, the bacteria learned to survive inside fleas, which colonized rats and spread with a speed and efficiency the world had never seen. But the plague wasn't just one event. There were three major pandemics throughout history. The first, the plague of Justinian, starting in 541 AD, which devastated the Byzantine Empire. The second, the Black Death, arriving in Europe in 1347, which killed an estimated 1/3 of the entire continent. And the third, beginning in China in 1855, which spread globally and killed over 12 million people in India alone. One gene, thousands of years of devastation. Fact 2. The Demon Plague. During the first plague pandemic, the plague of Justinian in 541, something deeply disturbing was happening to the victims. Before the fever and before any physical symptoms at all. They started seeing demons. The historian Procopius, who lived throughout the outbreak, documented that victims suffered terrifying hallucinations and waking nightmares. People generally believed these demons were physically responsible for spreading the plague. If a demon touched you, you were dead. So what did they do? They barricaded their doors, refused entry to everyone, neighbors, friends, their own family members. They were terrified of letting an invisible demon slip through the door. But this strategy actually worked. Isolation slowed the spread. Fact 3. The Towers of the Dead. At the height of the plague in Justinian, Constantinople was losing between 5,000 to 10,000 people per day. The city literally ran out of places to bury the dead. So, the emperor's officials came up with a solution. They started stacking corpses inside the massive defensive towers of the city walls, layer by layer, body by body. When the wind shifted, the smell of thousands of decomposing bodies would blow over the entire city. And when the towers were full, they loaded the bodies onto wooden ships, pushed them out to sea, and either let them drift or set them on fire. Remember those three pandemics I mentioned at the beginning? We're now in the second one, the Black Death, and it arrives in Europe in the most disturbing way imaginable. Fact 4. The first biological weapon. It's 1346, the beginning of the second pandemic. The Mongol army is attacking Kaffa, a wealthy Genoese trading port at the Black Sea. The siege is going badly for the Mongols because the plague was already making victims in their camp. Soldiers are dying by the thousands. So, the Mongol commander Khan Janibek makes a decision that will change history. He orders his men to load the plague-ridden corpse of the dead soldiers into catapults and launch them over the city walls. The first biological weapon in recorded history. The defenders of Kaffa were horrified. The plague erupted inside the city. The Genoese abandoned their posts, fled to their ships, and sailed back towards Europe. But they brought one thing with them: the plague. Black Death has arrived in Europe. Fact 5. The cures that killed you faster. So, the plague has arrived in Europe. People are dying everywhere, and the doctors of medieval Europe have a plan. Spoiler alert, it's a terrible plan. First, the Vicary method. Doctors would take a chicken, pluck the feathers off its backside, and strap the bare skin of the bird directly onto the patient's swollen lymph nodes. Why? Because medieval physicians genuinely believed that chickens breathed through their backsides, and that the suction would pull the plague poison out of the human body. Ooh, well. And that wasn't even the worst treatment. Some doctors prepared a paste made from human excrement mixed with tree parts and flower roots and applied it directly onto open plague wounds. You can imagine the result: severe infection and sepsis. A much faster death than the plague itself would have caused. And for the wealthy, they had their own special treatments. They would eat and drink crushed emeralds mixed into their food and water, which would tear through the digestive tract. And some, somehow even worse, chose to drink mercury or arsenic. Well. That leads us to fact 6. The great escape of the rich. You may be wondering, during all of this suffering of the common people, what were the rich doing? When the Black Death arrived in Europe in 1347, the wealthy had a very simple strategy: run. I think that sums it up pretty well. The aristocracy packed their bags, loaded their carriages, and retreated to their countryside villas, far from the infected cities, far from the sick, far from dying. The Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio watched this happen in Florence in 1348 and documented everything in his masterwork, the Decameron. He described the city fracturing into two extreme reactions. Some people became completely isolated, locking themselves in. Strict diets, total isolation, and praying constantly. Others went the complete opposite direction. Believing their death was inevitable anyway, they threw away every single moral rule out of the window. Drinking, feasting, endless parties in abandoned places, living like there was no tomorrow. Because for most of them, there really wasn't. Meanwhile, the nobility sat peacefully isolated in their country estates, waiting for it all to be over. Fact 7. The Pope's fiery shield. In 1348, Black Death reached Avignon, where Pope Clement was residing at the time. His plan: to sit between two enormous fires all summer long. His physician, Guy de Chauliac, one of the most brilliant medical minds of the medieval era, ordered massive fires to be kept burning continuously in the Pope's private chambers. The Pope was not allowed to leave. He was kept in complete isolation with no visitors allowed. The official medical reasoning was that the fires were purifying the air that they believed was spreading the plague. And it actually worked. The Pope survived, but not for the reasons anyone thought. The intense heat of the fires created a thermal barrier against the fleas who were carrying the plague. Fact 8. The birth of quarantine. In 1377, a small city on the Adriatic coast came up with an idea that would save millions of lives. That city was Ragusa, today known as Dubrovnik, Croatia. Ragusa had a problem. Its entire economy depended on maritime trade, ships arriving constantly from all over the Mediterranean. It couldn't simply close its borders like larger cities could afford it. So the chief physician, Jacob of Padua, and the Great Council came up with a compromise. Any ship arriving from a plague-infected region was not allowed to enter the port. Instead, it was diverted to a remote island, and the crew had to wait 30 days of ships, 30 days for ships, 40 days for travelers arriving by land. That 40-day period, in Italian quarantine, this is where we get the word quarantine. This system worked so well that in 1390, Ragusa established the world's first permanent public health office, the modern-day concept of quarantine, born in a small Croatian city in 1377. Fact 9. The island of dying. Venice had a problem. It was one of the wealthiest, most densely populated trading hubs in the world, with ships arriving daily from every corner of the globe. Thousands of people were passing through it constantly, the perfect conditions for the plague to thrive. So, Venice came up with something the world had never seen before. They built an entire island dedicated exclusively to the dying. In 1423, the Venetian Republic established the Lazzaretto Vecchio, the old quarantine, a remote island where symptomatic citizens were relocated by force, but not to be treated or to recover. Oh no, they were sent there to die, away from everyone else. Contemporary accounts describe conditions that were absolutely horrifying. 3 or 4 patients into a single bed, an extremely bad smell that nobody could endure, smoke constantly rising from the burning of corpses. Recent archaeological excavations on the island uncovered over 1,500 skeletons and mass graves, with thousands more expected. Fact 10. The village that chose to die. In 1665, the plague arrived in a small English village called Eyam. It came in a bundle of clothes, delivered to the local tailor from London. Within days, the tailor was dead. Then his family, then his neighbors, and the village faced a choice: run, and potentially spread the plague to every surrounding village and town, or stay. Eyam had to seal itself off from the world. No one leaves, no one enters. The surrounding villages left food and medicine at the outskirts, and Eyam waited. Over the next 14 months, 260 people died out of a population of around 800. That's nearly 1/3 of the entire village. But the plague did not spread to the neighboring villages, not a single case. The people of Eyam had made a collective selfless decision to sacrifice themselves for the people around them. Fact 11. This is something not a lot of people know. For the people who survived the plague, life actually got better. Think about it. 1/3 of Europe's population died in the span of a few years. This had dramatic effect on the labor market. Suddenly, there aren't enough workers, and workers who can work can demand more things: high wages, better conditions. For centuries, peasants in medieval Europe had been trapped in feudalism, tied to the land and working for almost nothing. But now, the plague changed everything. Surviving peasants found themselves in high demand. Since lord and landowners were desperate to find people to work their fields, the peasants started negotiating. And they won. The aristocracy was horrified, so horrified that they passed laws called sumptuary laws that literally made it illegal for peasants to dress like nobility or eat certain food. They tried to legislate their way back to the old social order. It didn't work. Fact 12. The plague doctor mask was never medieval. The long black coat, the hat, the Berg mask. You've seen it everywhere. The iconic image of the medieval plague doctor. There's just one problem. It never existed in the Middle Ages. There's zero historical evidence, zero paintings, zero written accounts, zero archaeological findings of this mask being used during the Black Death in 1347. During the medieval period, doctors visiting plague victims simply held a vinegar-soaked sponge or a small bag of herbs to their nose. The iconic mask was actually invented in 1619, nearly 300 years after the Black Death. So, the most recognizable symbol of medieval plague medicine wasn't medieval at all. If you made it to the end, you know more about the plague than most people ever will. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and even comment. It would help me a lot. Bye. Stay tuned.